is an introductory to drone technology and like drones and videography, I suppose, with using with drones. What I thought I'd do is kind of start off with a video that we put together a couple of years ago, I guess 2, 3 years ago, where we circumnavigated the coastal line of Canada, and we sailed from Toronto to Victoria through the Northwest Passage, and I was the what was I? I was the drone pilot for the ship, but also I did a whole bunch of other things. I thought I'd start with that, and then from there we can roll into what I have planned for the rest of the class. That works for everybody. So bear with me because I'm learning how to do this as we go. Am I sharing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
I can hear the video, but I can't see it.
Oh. Let's see, hold on. You can hear it, but you can't see it. So let's try doing this. Hold on. Can you see it now?
I see your cursor.
But you don't see the video? Oh, you're sharing pages. Okay, so I want to change that. So this is what I'm sharing. How do I change that? Stop sharing. Let me try this.
There we go.
All right, cool. Can you see it still? Big white page?
Yep.
Are we live? Okay, so how do I get? Hi, am I back?
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Okay, so anyway, so that was a video that we did for Canada C3. I'm Ryan Rizzo. I've been working with drones for about 10 years. So essentially, how it all started was I was working in film and television for quite a long time, and then went back and did a master's degree at OCAD University, where I ended up building my own drones. I was building robots and writing programs for them, which was kind of boring at the time. Then I ended up putting propellers on the robots, and it was right around the same time that the drone technology started to take off. So we were kind of like on the front line of the technology and how it was all unfolding. We were, essentially just at the right place at the right time. And then DJI and 3D robotics and some of these larger companies started to develop drones, which we started to just integrate into our workflow, which made our lives a whole bunch easier. And saying that, like, using the tool for video was awesome, because everybody got this like new perspective of how to look at things, and different ways of telling stories. How it all ended up happening for me was I ended up working with Transport Canada, which is our sort of like, for our US viewers, like, it's like the FAA, but it's the Canadian version. So what they did was they hired us on as consultants to help like formulate and build the regulations for this industry as it was growing. So we've been working as consultants with them for I don't know, for like 10 years now, which has kind of put us into a pretty decent position because now we're, you know, helping educate and build curriculums for colleges and universities and places like Taking It Global for different communities across the country and internationally sometimes. The technology. So the drone. So the drone is like, well, here I have one here. So this is like our workhorse. So this one here this is called the Phantom 4. This is the RTK version. This is my workhorse. This is the one that I use pretty much a majority of the time. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but so how it works is obviously on the top you got your propellers, right? This right here is an RTK system. What RTK means, it's like how can I describe it? So essentially what it does is it triangulates the position of the drone so that when the drone's flying, it will triangulate with the cell to the satellite, to the drone, to the cell network, to the satellite, back to the drone. And what that allows us to do is get accurate measurements of mapping and volumetric measuring, things like that, which I'll show you later on. But for the tool itself, the drone, I mean, these things are so robust, like they're actually pretty tough. So this one here is a 4K camera on the front end here. And if you can see on the front here and here, these are proximity sensors, and there's one on this side. There's one on every single side, including the back. And with the new ones, there's some on the bottom as well. Like you can see two right here. What those do, they're called like a sense and avoid. So essentially, when you're flying, it almost makes it like impossible to hit things. Although power lines and tree branches are always going to be a concern, and birds because they come out of nowhere. I can tell you a story about birds after, but anyway, so yeah, so the technology itself, it has like RTK, which is the positioning software. They're equipped with like GPS so that when you're on the app, it'll show you where you are located. And you can do things such as like waypoint finding, which is an interesting tool that we use quite a bit for another project that I'll show you in a bit. But yeah, so this is the Phantom 4. This is just the workhorse. This is one of the smaller drones that we use. But it's it's pretty simple. You got your battery that pops out. These are intelligent batteries, so when you hit the button on here, it'll tell you like, well, this one's dead, but how much life is left in it. Some good things to know about the drone is that they're pretty smart now. Like they have this return to home function. So essentially, when you take off and you're flying, and if you're running out of battery or you get too far, it will just automatically return to the place that it actually took off. So they're almost like foolproof nowadays. I mean, when we teach, we try not to get people too reliant on like the idea that to rely on the software. Fly manually so that you actually understand like what to do in the event that something doesn't work, like that you actually totally have control. And that's like one of the major things that we focus on in our course is the idea of like flying things manually and when you're planning your missions. So yeah, the Phantom 4 RTK, it's actually a pretty cool little tool. This is the remote that goes with it. This one here has like a built-in screen on it, and you get your map. It's basically like an iPhone that works like, it's pretty awesome. Some of the things that we use it for primarily is mapping and surveying. I'm kind of like getting out of the whole video thing, even though I'm doing a beer commercial on Monday and Tuesday. We're doing a social distancing commercial. It's just an interesting way to tell stories. But one of the things that I started to realize when we were on the C3 expedition was the idea of like using the technology to actually be able to collect data. and be able to see things from an aerial perspective where no one has ever been before, and how can we take those photographs and build something a little bit substantial out of it. I have an example. See if I can show you. Here. So this image here, can you see this? Can you see that, Jessica? You can see this, yeah? Yeah. So essentially, this is one of the projects that we're working on here in Toronto. It's the Google, well, not Google anymore, but it's the Portland's flood protection program. So essentially, if you take a look at the green line that's there, that is like a waypoint. So we pre-create the actual flight of the drone, and the drone will hit all of those marks. And if you look closely, you can see the arrow pointing inwards. That's the actual direction of the camera. And so what we do is well, actually, I can show you the video. I think I have the video on here. No, I don't. It's actually not that fun to watch, but it's pretty cool. What it does is you fly it once, and it remembers the actual altitude, the speed, and the direction of the camera, and it saves it in the software, so that every time we go back to that site, it will recreate the same image time and time again. And what that's really good for is, for example, this particular project is there's a bunch of construction going on here. They're like rerouting the river and a whole bunch of stuff going on. So all the major stakeholders like to take a look at that and see the progression of the project month over month. So we go back every 2 weeks and do this. So that's like one way of using the drone technology, and that's like for mapping and we call it mapping and surveying essentially. Another thing that we use it for is counting animals. So we have a contract with the British Research Institute where we go down into the Antarctic, usually in January and February. This year we didn't go just because of the coronavirus. But what we do is we monitor the penguins, and essentially what we do is we take an aerial photo of I wish I had the video for this, but there's 500,000 penguins on this rock. And by looking at it from an aerial perspective, you can count the species year over year to see if the species are actually declining or if they're actually not declining, and there's more. So the first year we went there was 400,000. Those penguins are crazy. There's so many of them nowadays. So we use them for counting. Obviously, we have some video that it's super popular to use drones for, which I think a majority of you would be too interested in. So I'll maybe show you. Which one should I show you? I'll show you here. We did this one. This is actually kind of interesting. You might like this. Let me see if I can. I got to change this and go here and go here. I'll start it over.
The bear whose world is floating is older than the bones she scattered on the beach, the ones now left alone with the crushing weight of time. The bear whose world is floating is older than the tent rings turning empty circles, stone on stone on stone. The bear whose world is floating is older than the birch bark tinder carried north and lost, older than the hands that brought it, long since gone to pieces and scattered with the rest. The bear whose world is floating is older than the ice she rides upon, older than the sounds the glaciers made, older than the winters stacked like carpets in their thousands, their secret patterns cut and set to drifting. And she is older too than the ones who try, day upon endless day, to apprehend her essence through their long lenses, thin and frail, as new ice.
So essentially, you get an idea of like, you know, just how cool it is to be able to use drones to, you know, tell a story, and you know, it's almost like it's a bird's eye view, but it
Bonjour
also.
to all. Hi, everybody. It's Jeff Green from Canada C3.
Let me shut
It's
that
hard to
off. Hold on
believe
one sec.
that it's almost been one.
All right, sorry about that. I was like, "What the hell, Jeff's here?" Anyway, so like the idea of using a drone to like tell stories, it's really like just added this new element to you know, storytelling. I mean, you know, I find it super comical. Like we've done things like I worked on Suicide Squad. I've done just about every TV show that's filmed in Toronto. You know, it's a really great tool to be able to tell a story. You know, but it's not all just flying a drone and like being able to, you know, buy the Phantom or buy the Mavic or get a Spark. I mean, there's rules and regulations that are, you know, extremely important. That, you know, we try to emphasize the importance of like understanding airspace, understanding, you know, the different kinds of drones and you know, how you interact with other air traffic. So, for example, you know, there's, you know, Transport Canada regulates airspace. There's different kinds of spaces that you're allowed to fly in and not allowed to fly in, and in collaboration with Taking It Global, we've put together an online course. Actually, I think I could show you. I have it here somewhere. I think you guys might all have access to this at some point too. So what we did was we put together an online program, like a school, that will prepare you for, you know, exploring the idea of being a visual drone pilot or content maker, using drones as a tool, through Create to Learn and Taking It Global. And I think Jessica could set you guys up with this later, but essentially what we did was I took all the, you know, the important things, I think, to make people fly safe, and sort of condensed it into an online program that should take about somewhere in between, well, I mean, somewhere between 10 and 19 hours of video and reading. And it tells you essentially how to prepare yourself for the tests, because there is, obviously we're a regulated industry, which means that, you know, in order to fly commercially, you need to have the proper certification through, whether it be the FAA or Transport Canada if you're in Canada. This course will actually prep you for that course and for that test, and you should pass if you get through all this. But if you look over here to the left, you have the introduction, obviously, and then we have the well, here, I'll play this just to give you an idea of what the course is like.
Hi again, it's Chris Marshall. Well,
I think you have to share your screen, Ryan.
Oh, shoot, sorry.
in this chapter, we'll be
Can you see
taking a
that?
look at a few videos on airlines.
No, not yet.
Oh,
These are
Just while you're sharing, I just wanted to say a few people commented on the videos you shared so far, saying super cinematic and creative, very beautiful. Someone also said that's literally my dream job. I'm thinking that might refer to the counting and kind of the surveying of the animals. Charlene can maybe clarify that. But we also had another question, and I feel like this goes with the rules and regulations. Can you go to space with a more expensive drone? Like, have they created technology where civilians can actually like that? I know there's an atmospheric barrier and stuff, but also like I'm thinking that falls under rules.
yeah. So that's interesting. That's a good question. So there's drones, no, because what happens is the way the propulsion system works on a drone, it essentially, like, as you go higher and higher, the air gets thinner and thinner, which means that the propellers don't work. So you know, that's why helicopters are sort of maxed out at like 5,000 feet. Whereas if, you know, a jet would have like a jet engine, right? So that can actually hit the streamline and then coast with the streamline. So The drones that we currently use with the propeller systems, no, they don't work in outer space. However, there is a loophole, which is kind of interesting, and we've done it. You can apply for what's called a weather balloon application. And so you can buy what's called a weather balloon, and you can put a GoPro on it. And as long as you apply for it and you communicate with Transport Canada and have it certified, you can put a GoPro on a weather balloon, and it takes about 20 minutes for it to get outside of the atmosphere, like outside of the ozone, like up in the stratosphere. But you got to find it after it comes down. So like what happens is the balloon will go up and it'll pop, and then your camera falls. So it is possible, but not with drones. Not with the drones that we use. There are military grade drones that do go up to that altitude that would allow it to be in the stratosphere. However, those are like way out of our pay grade. At this point, like maybe in a couple of years you might be able to do it. My videos are choppy. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunately with WebEx, Ryan, if you're able to send me some links, I can send them over after. For you as a presenter, they're always smooth, but unfortunately with video conferencing platforms, not just WebEx, but Zoom, when you share videos, like we can get a lot of it, just not as smooth as, unfortunately, it's just the system, but.
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll share my PowerPoint with you afterwards, and it has all the links in it.
Perfect.
But you guys have to like the videos. We all like likes. Okay, so what was I going to do? Oh, I was going to show you so I'm talking about the course. Can you see this, Chris, here? Air laws and rules. Okay, so this. I just want to go back to the course that you guys will all have access to, hopefully, after this. So if you just look at the left-hand side here, so you got your introduction, you got your air law, rules and procedures. Here, this is Chris, who's one of our champions. Who I'll just play a couple seconds just so you get a sense of like how the course rolls. Can you hear that and see it? Yeah. Okay. Go.
Drones are considered to be an aircraft, which makes you a pilot. When you fly your drone, you have to be aware that you're sharing the skies with other UAVs as well as other aircraft. Before flying your drone, you must understand the rules that have been laid out for us pilots. First and foremost, drone pilots must follow the rules in the Canadian Aviation Regulations document. Pilots must always carry a valid pilot certificate, as well as have a drone mark with its registration number that's associated with that pilot. You must respect all other laws while flying your UAV. It's important that you fly your drone responsibly to avoid harming others. Here are a few main rules you need to follow while flying your UAV. You need to have a UAV license.
So you get it. So yeah, so like Chris does a little introduction for each chapter. We go through the air law, rules and procedures, which is pretty extensive, but it actually just I mean, as much as it is like to like sit down and watch like a video learning something that's like kind of like government like regulated or whatever, and how boring it kind of is, we tried to make it as like entertaining as possible. And if you're serious about like wanting to use drones as a tool to tell your stories, or to explore a career, or just this is the way to go. Like we made the decision right from the very beginning to like follow the rules and regulations, and at the end of the day, it's really opened up a lot of really cool opportunities for us. Whereas, there's a lot of guys out there and girls out there that will buy a drone, but then they just kind of like don't, take the course, and you know what I mean? But it kind of limits you. If you don't have the proper certification, then you can't really go and get a decent job. Here, I'll show you guys one other thing that's kind of cool. Here's one of, I'm going to see if I can do this with, let's see. So check this out. You see that? So basically, like what I was, well, I'll show you one more too, since I'm here. Show you one more, and this all loops into what I was talking about. Sometimes it works like right away, and sometimes it doesn't. Here we go. Yeah, this one. You can see that okay? So again, so going back to just the idea of, let me see if I can do this. You and Emily, whatever that means. So, okay, so basically my point was this, that if you do everything right, you take the course and you get the proper certification, you get like a better chance of getting cooler jobs. So, for example, you know, the Canada C3 thing where we got to go around the country on a ship, like that was, you know, pretty cool. The whale study that we do every year with MIX, which is funded by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. We've been running that study now for 4 years. This year we are not doing it just because of this COVID thingy. But the money just rolled into next year, right? So we get to do it again next year. So we've been studying the entanglement scar tissues on the fins and the blues and the right whales in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. Never has there been a study that has given the data that we've been able to collect. A lot of people will call it like video, but I call everything data, just because you make more money when you say data. But it's like, so basically like all the data that we collect on these animals, we would never be allowed to get these jobs if we didn't have the proper certification, because a lot of these sort of like large corporations and government agencies, the first thing they ask for, like Parks Canada, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the first thing they ask, Transport Canada, the first thing they always ask for is, you know, our certification. Right. And one of the reasons why, you know, Taking It Global and Mike and Create to Learn and us came together was the idea that like let's put a package together to give people an opportunity to get their, you know, the basics at least under their belt if they want to pursue this as a professional career. So I mean, there's so many things that I could talk about. So basically, like, you know, it's you know, the course will cover everything from the style of drones, what the drones do, the technology that plays with each drone. We have how to manage a proper flight operation, you know, what to look for, you know, the things that, the dangers that come along with it, you know, the what if, moments, because there's quite a few of them, like, you know, any day, anything can go wrong. And weather, you know, understanding how to read clouds and understanding weather patterns, because you know when you're flying something like the Phantom, or you're flying like a Mavic, or even something smaller, or even something bigger, you know, you got to be able to predict the weather prior to going out into the field, and all that stuff is covered in the class. So what I'll do is maybe open it up a little bit. If you guys have any questions, maybe I can try to like explore or expand on some questions if you guys have any.
I don't see any at the moment. I'm going to encourage everyone to kind of put in the chat, but I have a question for you. You kind of touched on it a little bit, and I feel like it's evolved over the years. But where are you mainly seeing drone footage being used more? So I know we've talked a lot about, you know, studies and things, but you also mentioned you're shooting a beer commercial and they've used it in TVs. So kind of like where is that kind of moving? And are you seeing the expansion of where this footage is being now used in different styles of film?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a really good question. So one of the things that we've been working with is the RTK version of the Phantom here. But what we do is it's called photogrammetry. So essentially what we do is we use the drone to take thousands and thousands of images. And then what we do is we stitch the images together. And because we have the RTK where we're binging off the satellite, off the cell network, and then back to the drone, we're getting a level of accuracy of like 5 centimeters, which allows us to like use the data for volumetric measuring. Right. So, for example, with the Cherry Street project that we're working on, like if there's a big pile of dirt, we're able to identify what, like how much dirt is there. And then the stakeholders, like the construction companies or the developers, they use that data to determine how many trucks they need to move that dirt. You know, so what's really starting to happen is the idea of using drones for just video is kind of like secondary for our business model now, and we're moving more into data collection. So you know, we're data collectors and then processing the data for clients. That's we're more of a data company now than like a videographer company. But I mean, I never turn down work. You know what I mean? Like we're constantly like we're hiring, and you know, Mike LaBelle actually is working with us now. So it's like, you know, Mike and I are working on that commercial next week. So, because we've been doing some CBC stuff together. Mike's awesome. And he went through the course and he's passed, and now he's a pilot. So he's doing some projects with us, which is super exciting. And it's a huge field. Like, I mean, there's in the next like 5, I saw something on the news, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. And it was like the morning show or something. And it was kind of like, you know, it was like foresight and innovation, and it was kind of like, where are the jobs going to be in 2035? And you know, one was like finance, one was like you know, IT, and number 5 was like a drone pilot. So it's, I mean, it's happening, and it's happening really fast, and it's such a great time to actually get in on the learning curve now while it's still in its infancy, because you know, especially if you're a youth or if you're younger, it's just a really good tool to have in your belt. It's something really good to have, like whether you're looking for a social media job, or if you're looking to work in film, or like us, like working in construction sites and development. It's like, I mean, one of the things we're doing right now is we're flying drones inside of elevator shafts. So the new buildings that are going up, like from like the 6th floor to the 10th floor, or the 6th floor to the 20th floor, there's no elevator doors on it. It's just a shaft. And they have a really hard time mapping the inside of these elevator shafts. So what they do is they hire us, and we take the drone and we fly up the elevator shaft. We usually crash them, but it happens, you know. At least don't hurt anybody inside of an elevator shaft. So I don't know. What's
Thank you.
Yeah. So okay, here's a question. So yeah, so it depends on where you are. Like, I mean, the cost for getting a license. So I mean, the majority of the cost really revolves around the learning tool that you use, like what school you go to, or what's your online learning tool. Because you're here with us right now, you get free access. I don't know if I think it's free. Yeah, so you guys get free access to the school, and you guys get to absorb all the knowledge that we've put in the course. So that's usually the expense. We're giving that away, and then to write the test for Transport Canada costs $10. But you fail. You'll fail once. You'll fail twice. It took me 5 times to pass it, and I'm a teacher. So to have your expectations kind of low, and when you're doing the quizzes and stuff inside the course, like make sure you're keeping notes, because it's a tricky test. It's the way it's worded. Hope that answered your question.
Just to kind of go off that, I have another question. So say you get licensed and you do the course and certified, and I know we all kind of start somewhere. Is there a certain type of drone or a certain technology you would recommend to start off with, and then kind of if there's any other, you mentioned a few names, but just kind of the different technology and what it's kind of more made for per se?
Yeah. So DJI is the best, at the moment. You can buy something called a Spark, which will run you probably $200, $300, and it runs off your phone. It comes with the remote, shoots 4K. But it runs on Wi-Fi, so you're limited on your distance, right? So it's good to fly around your house or around your house. You know what I mean? It's a good learner tool, but it also has all the bells and whistles that all the advanced technology has, right? So it has gesture based, so you can actually control it with your hand. You can train it to take a photograph. It has the follow me focus, so you can like jump on your bike and then have it follow you. It has avoid, sense and avoid on it as well. Those run for about about $400 or $500. Then you get the Mavic Mini, it depends on what your level, your entry level budget is, right? You can spend $500. You can spend, one of our drones is like 50,000. So lots of different price points. So there's a question here. Yeah. Yeah, so that's okay. So that's actually cool. So no. So it's like I do know about it. I've done it. I do it. I do a lot of FPV stuff. When we do the whale studies, I often wear the goggles just because I'm looking for a specific scar tissue on the whale, so I need to have like direct visual of what I'm flying. Mind you, wearing the goggles on a boat is like you get sick to your stomach because you're wearing goggles and you're like looking at the screen, but the boat's going like this, so you don't really know what's going on, and it's kind of trippy. But so if you ever watch the FPV guys, they're usually sitting there with the goggles and they're like hunched over on a lawn chair. FPV is pretty fun. It's pretty fun. So the way it works though is you do need a license if your drone is over 258 kilograms, or it has to be. It's based on weight class of the drone. So a lot of the FPV drones are like super small and they're under the weight class, so you don't actually need certification to fly them. So you can get away with it. And if you fly indoors, you don't need a certification. If you fly outdoors and it's over the weight class, then you need to have the proper certification. But at the end of the day, it really makes sense to take the course and understand the ins and outs, because you're going to want to anyways. Trust me. Once you start flying, you're going to want to go to a bigger machine, and you're going to want to fly outside and at different spaces and stuff. And you should really know where you're allowed to fly and where you're not allowed to fly. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think there's any more questions at the moment. Give it a few minutes, see if there's anything. But I was just curious if you could share maybe one of your favorite experiences. I know you've been doing this for quite some time now, and it's definitely evolved over the years. But maybe you had a special, certain memory of either a job that you did or just a learning moment from, flying drones.
We did the Amazing Race a couple of years ago, and we were in Tofino, BC, and I was flying a Phantom, and a bald eagle came and just grabbed it and flew away with it.
An eagle took the drone.
Took the drone and off it went, like just no control, no nothing, didn't, just see you later. Just like that. Just
So
like
you
that.
weren't kidding about the birds then.
No, no, no. The big birds. Well, I mean, bald eagles on the West Coast are quite huge. They're, you know, I was in Haida Gwaii last year and working with Patrick, and yeah, they have a lot of eagles in Haida Gwaii as well. Yeah, you can chop your finger off with a drone propeller. There's, I mean, you can. I mean, you shouldn't. I mean, because if you take the course, you'll know how to properly set up the drone and the different, like, we work off a checklist, right? So, I mean, we have a foolproof checklist. So it's like, number one, put the battery in. Number two, do this. Number three, do this. So like, I mean, if you follow your checklist, it's like muscle memory. You kind of get into the habit of running a smooth operation, and that's all under flight operations and the chapter that we have online. But it's possible. Like, I mean, you can have like with some of our bigger machines, we have 17.5-inch propellers, which are, you know, big, and they're wood. So, and some of them are carbon fiber. So yeah, they could definitely chop off. We're hiring. So I mean, yeah, like, I mean, we're hiring right now. We're always hiring. So I mean, if you do the course, shoot me an email. I'm very easily accessible. Our company's called TerraSky. You know, we got a ton of projects coming up right now, and you know, we're a national company. We have 7 offices across Canada. So we're busy. Vertical dolly, zoom, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so all of those. So basically, I mean, when you're talking about creative camera shots, I mean, we were often hired just to do a dolly shot. You know, the crane shots. Like sometimes people just want that crane shot, like that one, like an establishing shot. You know, so producers will call us and say, hey, can you just come out and get the, you know, the sunrise over this house or over this hill? You know, so we do a lot of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of work for that. You know, at the end of the day, we're trying to get out of that kind of work just because there's so many people getting into that. But you know, we never say no to a job. So Terra Sky, you got it. That's it, Terra Sky. Yeah, I think Jessica will. Yeah, Jessica just said that. Thanks, Jessica. I mean, it's super fun. I mean, it's one of those things where you get to kind of like manage. You get to be your own business manager. You know what I mean? Like if you buy yourself a drone, you get really good at it. You are the entrepreneur. You know, and that's kind of like what we try to, you know, support is the idea is that people will come and work with us. We start to train you, and then off you go. And you know, because everybody has their own different interest levels, and you know, the great thing about having this sort of like tool in your tool belt is that, you know, you can go out and you can be your own boss. You know what I mean? And it's like and it's just so much more fun than, you know, working for me because I'm a strict boss. Not at all. But yeah, so it's yeah, we're actively looking for people. So if people do go through the course and stuff, you know, we're easily accessible. We have a lot of projects coming up. Actually, we have one huge project coming up in the Arctic. We're doing something for the Coast Guard in April. We were supposed to do it this year, but we're doing it next year. For 30 days, we're on a Coast Guard ship, flying around mapping Arctic Bay and a whole bunch of places up in the Arctic. So we're kind of looking for people for that stuff right now.
Quick question. So I know it's a national company, but are people like, you know, because it is an international group we have here, are they able to apply for the job outside of Canada?
Yeah, so no. So basically, you have to be a Canadian citizen in order to get the certification in Canada. So one of the things, like for example, right now we have two people who work for us from Colombia who moved here from Colombia, and we sponsored them. And the paperwork was like long and extensive, and it was pretty heavy duty. However, the interesting thing about the course that is on Taking a Global portal is that we've designed it so that it actually covers all the basic requirements for international air law. So one of the things about Transport Canada and the FAA is like air law is the same in pretty much every country. And so what we did was we took just the basics so that anybody could take the course, whether you live in Sri Lanka or if you live in India, or if you live in China, the air laws are the same everywhere. Not so much in Central America, just because they have a different frequency for the remotes. But I mean, that's minor. I mean, but the air laws are the same. It's international air law. It's the same across around the world. Yeah. What's the weirdest thing I've ever seen with my drone? Naked sunbathers in their backyards. But besides that, one time, I'll tell you a really weird job I got one time. So about 5 years ago, this woman came up to me and she says, "Oh, yeah, I heard you have a drone company." And I was just like, "Yeah, like, you know." She's like, "Well, I'm my son's bar mitzvah is next weekend in our backyard, and she's like, we have this hornet nest on the side of our house, and we can't get at it. Like, she's like, we can't get the hornets." And she's like, "Do you think you can come out and like try to get rid of this hornet nest?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, because we never say no to a job." So I went out to her house and I took the Phantom and I got one of those like, meter rulers, the stick, and I taped it to the drone. So we had a stick with the camera like this. So a stick, and I flew the drone up to the hornet nest, and I was like trying to loosen it and like get it off and everything. But what happened was there were so many hornets attacking the drone and getting caught in the propellers that all the motors got filled with blood and guts, and it crashed. So weather's insurance. So yeah, so innovating with technology. Mind you, though, like, I mean, we do a lot of work with, all joking aside, like we do a lot of conservation photography. So, we work with whales. We do the bison study at the Banff National Park. We've been counting the bison now for 3 years. We work with polar bears. We work with the penguins. I mean, we follow the rules. There is a very strict mandate when you're getting the proper permitting and stuff to work in places like Parks Canada and in the Antarctic and Arctic. I have this one video. I couldn't find it. I tried to get it. We were down in the Antarctic, and there was 500,000. I'm not even exaggerating. 500,000 penguins on this island, and it was like the first time I got to fly on top of them. So I was like, imagine my fingers like being all penguin heads, and so I had the drone way over here, and I started it up, and we took off, and I started flying, and like all the penguins were like, "Moo!" And like all 500,000 heads were like looking at the drone, and as I was flying by, all their heads like turned at the same time. It was like it's something that should be in a Netflix story or something. I couldn't find the video. It was on a hard drive that I don't have. It's at the office and at home, but. So there's some fun things that you get to see and do that you don't expect. Like, I mean, the whale stuff. Like, never have there's been I should have showed you the bubble feeding. Anyway, so if you go to my Facebook, like I don't know if I'm allowed to promote my company, but if you go to the Facebook Terra Sky Facebook page, there's something there called bubble feeding, and it's never ever been recorded on. Ever in North America, and what we found was the humpbacks were like bubble feeding, and it's pretty magical. Like if it's pretty cool. Yeah, we worked with underwater drones. They're they're okay. It's just like the thing with them underwater is like all the good fish and well, not fish, but all the good animals. They live like where the water's dark. You know what I mean? Like, so dark, muddy water is filled with nutrients. So you barely see a good whale in like the Caribbean, barely. So we kind of never really use them. And then we had a really bad experience with one where the tether broke, and then we couldn't find it. And they're expensive, and it's a different ball game. But they're fun. Can the drones do whip pans or whip tilt shots? Whip pan, whip tilt. Like yeah, I can't see why not. I mean, it depends on what drone you use, right? So, so for example, with this one here, this is only a 2-axis gimbal. So it depends on what gimbal you're using and what drone you have. So this is only a 2-axis gimbal. So it doesn't really turn left to right. You know what I mean? It does just a little bit, but it doesn't go all the way up, and it goes all the way down, but it doesn't all the way go up. So it's considered a 2-axis gimbal. We have a thing called the Movi, which is we attach to a larger drone that has like a 360. It's a what we call a 3-axis gimbal, which gives it like a full 3-axis turning and stuff. So we can do some pretty cool stuff with that.
All right. Well, it looks like our hour is up, and I just want to say thank you, Ryan, so much for this incredible session and for all the great questions that we had. I will definitely make sure I have the link to the course. It is free of charge for everyone who is part of our virtual summit. So we'll be sending that off. And I also just wanted to mention, Ryan, you talked about a few. So Michael Lobel is actually going to be part of our careers panel that we have tomorrow.
Oh,
so
cool.
everyone will get to kind of meet and hear more about him. And then we had a session with Patrick Shannon yesterday, talked a little bit about Indigenous filmmaking. So you'll notice that a lot of our guest speakers and facilitators, it's a really great network that we have through Taking It Global with all these great artists. So yeah, so Ryan, thank you so much again for taking the time and coming to speak so passionately about what you do for a living. And I'm kind of excited now. I don't know how technically savvy I am, but I think I'm going to take a look at this course, but we'll see if I actually get certified.
Well, you know what? I mean, I'll have you out anytime you want to come. Anytime you want to come.
Thank you. And yeah, everyone's just saying, thank you so much. Super insightful, really cool session. Yeah, all the recordings, guys, for the sessions will be provided after. And then, Ryan, if anyone had any other questions, would it be okay if they emailed you or?
Absolutely. Go to my website, TerraSky, hit the info at TerraSky or Ryan at TerraSky. I'm always available. Like, I mean, if you just want to ask about a different drone, or if you have problems with the course, if you do sign up to the course, I'll know because I'll see your name. I think I'm going to Mike and I were talking about maybe doing follow-up, like sort of once a month kind of thing, like where maybe I'll do like an info session or something for the course. I don't know where that's at, but, I'm definitely active inside that course. I'll see you if you're inside that course, and you'll have access to shooting me chats and stuff through the platform. So I'm available.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to say goodbye for now. We have our next live Q&A at 6. So enjoy your 2-hour break, and we'll chat soon. Thanks again.
Thanks again.